Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michelle, and I'm a registered dietitian here at the Weight Management Center, and I'm going to be facilitating our group discussion today, which is going to be on meal planning. But the first thing I'd like to do is just to quickly go over some housekeeping stuff, namely just reminding you that we are recording this class. So we will, at the end, anonymize all of your names so nobody will know who you are or be able to track that in any way, shape, or form. And just a reminder that you will be getting your credits, your PERCA points for the attendance, but you'll need to complete a brief confidential online survey at the end of class, which I will redirect you to, and then you should be good to go with that. Okay, so with that being said, everybody can hear me, right? Excellent. Okay, so now I want you just all to please bear with me. This is my first class, so I'm just getting used to navigating around the screen here. Okay, so meal planning made easy, everything you will need to know now for eating well later. All right. So we're going to talk about a number of things today, including what it means to plan, the benefits of planning, the 3 Ps of meal planning, and some strategies and tips to successful planning. All right, so let's start with what it means to plan. So to plan means to decide on and arrange in advance. Simple enough, right? However, you know, when we think about food, we don't want to have to think too much about it. So having a plan and what that looks like and how many meals am I going to cook at home and how am I going to get that done with my busy schedule, all those things can kind of be a little overwhelming. And so what I hope to accomplish with our group today is to kind of break it down into those manageable bites, no pun intended, that will help you be able to clearly map how to do this without feeling overwhelmed or stressed. And in order to keep burnout at bay, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed and burned out, I would like for you to focus on 1 or 2 priorities, such as, and this is not an inclusive list, but I think these are in the top 10. Variety, thinking about saving money, preventing food waste, preserving your sanity, and no, I'm not kidding, because we all know how stressful this can be. Increasing your vegetable intake, meatless Mondays, but it also could be Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. And having an answer to the age-old question of what's for dinner. Can anybody give me or is willing to share a recent example of when you did some meal planning and how that turned out? No takers? Nobody's planned a meal. Okay, well then I will give you a plan, an example of when I planned recently. So I'm a grab and go girl. I don't like to have to cook every night when I come home, especially during the week. I'm tired. So I made a sheet pan meal, which we'll talk about later. And I did that on my weekend. I took about an hour's worth of time. I prepped my vegetables and my fish. I put it on a sheet pan. I put it in the oven. I cooked it, and 30 minutes later, I had meals for 4. So 4 meals, 4 quality meals in 30 minutes. I'm saying that's not too bad. So I wasn't stressed, and you know, I could just grab things and go, whether I took them for lunch or I had them for dinner. So that's just a small example. Any questions so far? No? All right, moving on. Okay, so the benefits of planning. It clearly saves us time and money. It also promotes portion control, satiety, and weight loss or management goals, right? It certainly can reduce anxiety and confusion. It increases appropriate choices and our confidence to do that moving forward long term. It increases our focus and organization, and most of all, when all of those things are in place, it tends to increase our happiness and well-being. And after all, when you think about it, the journey that you all have chosen to go on, with all these changes, I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not increasing your happiness and overall well-being, then you probably want to take a step back there. So this is all to help it. This is all to come together to help you be as successful as you can with your plans. Does anybody else have any benefits that you can think of for planning that I haven't mentioned here? Again, this is not the total list, just a few things that I thought of. Marcia, you are more successful when you meal plan. Absolutely. And you stay on plan than wing it. I have to agree with that. I think that's a great point, because when we have too many choices, we go on overload. And when we go on overload, it's not pretty, right? We tend to go left on the plan, and then that kind of leads to a lot of other stuff. So yeah, I think that's great. Definitely keeps us focused. Marty, oh, hey, you made cabbage and ham for lunch today and tomorrow. Thanks for saying that, because that reminds me of something. We're going to talk about it in another couple of slides, but that's great, because I call those your plandovers. It's kind of like it takes as much time and effort to cook for 1 or 2 as it does for 4 or 5. So keep that in mind. And Marty, that sounds like exactly what you're doing, so I think that's great. Paula, do you don't like breakfast food when you make a plan, like eating lunch or dinner type meals? Helps me feel fuller longer. Absolutely. So yesterday, Paula, you had 2-ounce hamburger patty with non-starchy veggies and less than ½ cup of rice for breakfast. I love doing the dinner for breakfast. I used to do that a lot myself. There's something about just having like chicken or meat. Sometimes you're just craving it at that point, and it's really satisfying. So I love that. And it is really satisfying. I used to have chicken in the morning, chicken and some potatoes and vegetables. It was really satisfying. And it was right after I'd worked out, so that kept me going through lunch and then some. Okay, so moving on. So part of what is the key to this whole planning thing is what we call the 3 Ps of meal planning. The first one is plan. All right, so when we think about planning, one thing that helps with that is to look at the calendar and decide how many nights you want to cook dinner at home. So 5 is kind of common, although some people say, hey, 3 is a sweet spot. But whatever it is that you're choosing, it's good to decide ahead of time, right? So you look at the calendar and say that you, out of 7 days, let's just say you're going to go for 3 meals. You immediately, we'll talk about this and having a template, something that you can look at, whether it's online or it's pen and paper, and you're going to plug in those days. And then you kind of work backwards and say, okay, now let's see, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do on this day? And then let me fill in with my snacks. So there is kind of a method to the madness with organizing this and taking this huge colossal thing of 7 days worth of meals and snacks, and how do I streamline that into just organizing how much I'm going to cook, what I'm going to cook at home, and when am I going to do that. So having that calendar, that template, which I have provided you with a couple of copies, we'll see in a second, and plugging in also helps with accountability, right? This is no different really than food journaling. You also want to think about on those nights that you're going to cook, whether it's you're coming home and you're actually cooking things, or you've already cooked it and you're reheating it, but you've taken care of that already, what you need to accomplish. So for instance, if let's say that you've got the kids that are doing the sports activities, and they're not going to be home until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night, but you're home at 5 or 6, right? So you've got these different meal times that you have to try to coordinate. Sometimes thinking in terms of that and saying, okay, what can I do? Like, maybe I can do, that would be a great night for a crock pot meal. So it's ready when I come home and I'm hungry. And then as the troops start to pile in throughout the night, they've got a satisfying, healthy, home-cooked meal ready for them that it's just kind of grab and go. They can plate it, they can take it, and they go. So it's keeping in mind things like that. So what you need in order to accomplish for that night, and then thinking about how you're going to do that and what type of preparation, slow cooker or something that you've already prepared days before, you can pull out of the freezer and put in the microwave. I also want you to think in terms of theme nights, because sometimes when you're looking at the week, it's just overwhelming to think, what do I plug in there? So having theme nights like salad night, chicken night, vegetarian night, breakfast for dinner night, meatloaf night. So having those things and then going back and finding the recipes sometimes is really helpful. So it's a little less stressful on trying to think, how am I going to get variety and all these different meals together. So then you're going to collect your recipes, all right? And the last piece of this planning is the hallmark to successful planning is writing it down. So by writing it down, I just mean, maybe it's better to say document. So if you are a paper and pen person, we have a template for that. If you're more a computer person and you want to type it out and then print it, I've got something for that. Or you can create your own through Google Docs or Word, whatever it is that you want to use. Any questions? Okay, moving on. So hopefully this is going to work. If not, I will find a way to post it maybe on our Facebook page or something that everyone can have access to it. But I found these and I really like them. Oh, okay, so far it's working. Oh, great. So this one I liked, just the layout is super simple and it can help get you started. Now this is one, as you can see, that you can just kind of type into. All right, so whatever it is you're going to type, based off of when you've had time to sit down, you can put in your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can put the week up here. And then down here in the notes, I like this because I thought this is a place where you could actually put your snacks. All right. Then you make your master shopping list here, and this is what you'll take with you to the market or online if you're purchasing online. Ooh. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you, and I apologize for the glitch and mute a virtual. Okay, so I'm just going to move on, and okay, so let's move on to purchasing. All right, so this is really simple. So now you've made your list, you've plugged it into your template. I'm going to have those posted, so don't worry about it. I will get them up on the website, or either on the website or on probably on our Facebook page. Okay, so you can see and have both versions, whatever works for you. But when you're purchasing, first thing, now we're in the store, we've already made our list. Well, don't go when you're hungry. All right, never go when you're hungry. Why do you think I'm saying that? Why do you think it's important not to go food shopping when you're hungry? Because you buy everything you crave. Yes, absolutely. Everything now has rose-colored a lens on it, and we think it just looks magnificent, right? It definitely intensifies the cravings, which turns into purchases. Absolutely. Everything is tempting, for sure. Acting on impulse, yeah. I think we've all done that, right? When you're hungry, everything just looks great, and then all of a sudden everything becomes a bargain, right? Oh, that's a great deal. Hey, let me go down this aisle and check it out. You tend to buy things you don't need, for sure. And we do tend to buy things that are not the most healthiest. That's true too. So this is something that helps keep us in check. All right, we're just keeping ourselves in check. So not going hungry helps keep us on that path. Now, let me just backtrack for a second. So when you made that list, right, you wrote down the recipes that you wanted and all of the ingredients. That's the first part of this, okay, is you picked your recipes and now you're writing down all the ingredients. Don't fuss at this point whether or not you have 2 cups of that but you need 1 more cup or whatever. Just write everything down. Then what you want to do, and not on that template, just write on a plain sheet of paper. On the template you have plugged in what you want for the week and what days. Now what you're going to do is you're going to cross-reference that entire master list of ingredients with what you have in your pantry. So this is where you go in and say, okay, I need 2 cans of tomato paste and I have 1. Okay, so I need 1 can of tomato paste. And you're going to make that final list. Then, if you want to get really fancy, you can group your ingredients together by department. So you might say, okay, all my canned goods are in this section, my frozen is down in this part of the page. So at least you know by department what things you're going to have to purchase. And then lastly, when you finally make it, so that final list is what's going to go on that template with you that's going to go to the store. So you don't have 1,000 scratches and X marks through everything. And then when you're shopping, you generally want to leave, and this depends again on how much time you're spending there, but as a general rule of thumb, leave the frozen and perishable foods for last, right? Because you want them to stay as cold or frozen for as long as you can. So maneuvering around your store, and most of us, we really kind of know our store layout. I mean, if you're generally shopping at the same places, you kind of know what the store layout is, where things are, so that shouldn't be too much. But again, this is just an easy way to kind of streamline your process. This whole thing about planning is to make things easier for you, not more complicated, okay? So, you know, you can always riff off of this, but these are just some general guidelines to when you're making, how to make that master list, and then how to approach it when you go into the store. Any questions so far? Or anybody have anything they want to add to that with, you know, your game plan of when you go shopping? No? Okay, so we'll move on. All right, the last P is preparation. All right, so this is where the rubber hits the road. Now, first thing I would recommend is to do this on a day of the week. You can set aside at least a couple of hours. Now, I know for some, the thought of cooking and preparing food for hours at a time is just mind-numbing. So I want you to just go into it kind of slowly, but like with that focus in mind. So you're setting aside whatever your weekend is, whether that's actually Saturday and Sunday or it's, you know, some days during the week. But carve out a couple of hours to do your preparation. So if you're the kind of person that says, hey, I chose 2 or 3 meals and I want them done now, I'm going to do kind of like batch cooking, great. Then, you know, it's obviously going to be more than 2 hours, but you've carved out that time on one of your days off where you have the time to be able to do it and not be stressed, and just focusing on that meal preparation. Or you can say, well, okay, I'm going to prep my vegetables, I'm going to make my spice blends and do things like that, because as the third bullet says, it's almost always possible to chop the vegetables, make sauces, or make those spice blends ahead of time. So that can be already set aside, and then when you come home one night, you just kind of put it all together, throw it in the oven or throw it in a pot on the stove, and you know, you're making it happen within a relatively short period of time, rather than having to do all that prep and then wait until it cooks. You're just kind of putting it all together, and that definitely streamlines the process and tightens it up. And that takes away less, it's less stress, less fuss, less muss. The whole point of this is to kind of help take the hectic out of your day, right? Take the rush. Now you're home. Now you have a chance to breathe and enjoy your food. And that's kind of what this process is about. So the other thing I want to say is don't hesitate to what I call share the wealth. So if there, is a spouse or partner at home who can help you with this process, don't hesitate. So just because you may be the the key player to this, like, oh, I normally do the shopping, or I normally prepare the food. Don't hesitate to lean on that other person and help you. I mean, everybody's benefiting from this process. So if we can make it, a group effort, all the better. Nobody should have to bear the complete brunt of everything. And then the last thing that I wanted to point out is, so once you've done this kind of prep, you're really in that grab and go stage. So whether you're going to do the cooking that day and then pack it away, or you're going to just kind of have things prepped in different packages, so when you come home, you can put it together and still have a meal in a very reasonable period of time. Okay, so that's kind of what the preparation piece is about. Okay, then we come down, we're in the home stretch. We're coming down to strategies and tips. So spend some time looking for recipes each week. I've listed 4, and just because of the experience I had a few minutes ago, I'm not going to click on to those, but they're there for you to kind of peruse at your leisure. Skinnytaste.com, I've discovered that since starting to work here, and they have some fabulous things, beautiful pictures. You can break out your search by the type of plan, whether you're looking for something that's more vegetarian or something that's diabetic or vegetarian friendly. Cookinglight.com, that's a go-to for me personally. Diabeticlivingonline.com, you do not have to be diabetic to benefit from the recipes. They have the same thing. They have a great breakout of meals based on whether you're, you're vegetarian or you're gluten-free or, other things. So that's something that's, I think, is a really great resource, and they keep their carbs in mind. And then allrecipes.com. Again, another favorite of mine. I found a lot of things on. So I just wanted to give you a few. If you don't, if you're not aware of all of these are some great go-tos that I found. The next thing I want to tell you is keeping your recipes simple, especially if you are new to trying to kind of get a handle on this whole strategy of menu planning. So maybe right now you don't want to pick 5 recipes. You might want to go with 2 or 3 to try for the week and plugging those in, see how that goes. And also just being mindful of how complex the recipe is. So keeping it kind of simple with relatively, minimal number of ingredients, 6, 10, and even a lot of these recipes, you can even break it out and it'll say 6 ingredients or less. So that's even a better place to start. Just keeping it simple and tasty. And then once you start to get the hang of this and it becomes more comfortable for you, then you can start looking at more complex recipes because you've kind of mastered the art of planning. And that's really what this process is all about. I definitely recommend, as we've stated earlier, having a dedicated day to plan and shop. So whatever your weekend is, ideally, is probably the best time to attempt to do that. Check for what's on sale. So sometimes, you don't have to necessarily be really rigid with, well, the recipe calls for, this. And I couldn't find that, or that was really expensive, but I found this as a substitute. Go for it. If you don't like butternut squash, but you like broccoli, put broccoli in. There's no hard and fast rules to menu planning, and it's really important that you choose recipes that you will eat or that your family will eat, preferably the same thing. So if that means sitting down and kind of talking with the fam and saying, hey, will you eat this before you go to the trouble of making it? Because we're not looking for you to have to make different meals on the same day. So really look to streamline that and try to satisfy everybody's taste with the meals that you choose. Okay? Don't overstuff the fridge and be very strategic with the freezer. I say this out of personal experience. I think it's great to prep. I'm a prepper. I'm a grab and go kind of girl. However, sometimes we put so much. We're so prepped with everything that we kind of forget maybe what's in the back of the refrigerator. And as we're clearing out the front, and we pull the stuff from the back to the front, we find that it's perhaps become a science experiment, or it was a color that it did not start out to be, right? And then we're throwing food out. We want to kind of avoid that. So if you're making 4 or 6 meals at a time, put 2 in the fridge, pop the rest in the freezer. Microwave or an oven will heat it right up in just a matter of minutes, which is way shorter than what you'd have to do for a meal out of a box or a bag, or having to just cook it from scratch that night. So keep that in mind. Use your freezer strategically. Generally, meals that you cook, you'll have about 2-3 days max before you would probably, have to throw it out. Right? Food doesn't do well that long. Freshly cooked food, you can't keep in there for a week before you decide to eat it. So just be mindful of that. And lastly, keep a well-stocked pantry. Really important. And as you continue to grow your repertoire of recipes, you'll find that you're using a lot of the same ingredients, so you'll know what to have as far as dry goods or something you can keep in the freezer, like vegetables, things like that. So that'll make the process a lot easier as you go along. And that's kind of it with the strategies and tips. Does anybody have any questions so far? Dana, can you freeze? I'm not sure what you're asking with can you freeze? Can you then freeze it? You're talking about when you make your meals, can you freeze it? If it's not eaten or 2-3 days, no. So once it's been sitting in the refrigerator for 2 to 3 days, no, you can't freeze it. So the best thing is when you make it, you let everything cool in the refrigerator first. And then just decide, you're better to err on the side of caution and throw it in the freezer than to let it sit in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 days. Because at that point, you're kind of at the end point, and it wouldn't be wise to freeze it. So freeze it up front then, and then you just have it to take out. So you might want to only leave 2 meals out and throw the rest in the freezer. Anybody else? Any questions, comments, concerns? No? All right, well, if nobody else has any questions, I'm going to try to remember how to bring us to the survey, and then I guess we'll end it, and I will make sure that I post those 2 documents somehow on our Facebook page, because I really like them. I think you'll find them pretty useful. Okay.